In this episode, we explore patterns of thought that can often appear negative to us, creating thought traps. We help you in identifying where you can fall into these traps and how to come out of them more easily by understanding what thought is and how it works. We show you how understanding the 3 principles begins to help unravel many years of unhelpful thoughts, beliefs, and behaviours. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Molls. How are you? Hello, everybody.
I'm great, darling. How are you?
I'm great. I've had an extremely busy, topsy-turvy, life-changing week. It's been quite a long build-up to it, sort of quite a lot of what's been going on. But yeah, I've really taken action over the last week and lots of different things have changed. So lots to talk about tonight, that I can probably see differences in my life where I've gone from thinking that things were really stuck and just making one small move and everything turning on its head. And it's been really emotional, but it's been amazing. So yeah, I've had a really good week. What about you?
Yeah, my week's been good. Peaceful. Yeah, I've had a really nice week. I hosted a Bitcoin meetup that we had last night that I always really enjoy with my friend BTC Essex, who isn't on here right now, but he might show up. And yeah, no, it's been really good. I'm really looking forward to this. Kind of prepped for it last week, and then Jen wasn't very well, so it's good to be back this week.
Yeah, it feels like we sometimes have complete opposite sort of experiences. I've been running around like a lunatic the last week, and you've had a really sort of chilled time. So it's nice to like have conversations when not putting yourself in other people's shoes, but it's like remembering, sometimes my life is so relaxed. And when you have conversations with other people and they're running around, it's like, God. And it's sometimes you forget how busy and how calm you can be. It made me laugh because I had a migraine last week and it was at the same time that you'd stopped eating carbs. So I was making the joke saying, can you start eating carbs again? Because I'm getting your headaches. And it was really, really funny. But yeah, the duality of life is very, very interesting. So lots to explore.
Yeah, it really is. The thought trap's a really interesting one as well. Have you got anything to add before we get going, Jem?
I don't think so. I mean, yeah, just looking forward to enjoying the conversation and really going into what the thought trap is, because like I said, I feel like I've learned a lot, but there is still so much to learn. So no, fire away. Thanks, Molls.
Oh, you're welcome, darling. And yeah, it'd be good to hear from you after I speak for a little while about how it looks different to you. So first, I just want to welcome everyone that's here. If you're listening on Spaces or if you're listening afterwards on the podcast, thank you for listening. And again, please share this episode on social media. Our aim is to wake up to the world to a system of understanding how the mind works that can really be helpful for people in navigating their lives and their problems. So we're on a mission here. When we ask you to listen, we ask you to listen as if you're listening to music or as if you're listening to rainfall. Don't try and get into the complexities of your mind. This is about dropping out of the mind. We're pointing to something deeper. We're pointing to the space where thought comes from. So the thinking trap is a really, really interesting subject because we've all got them. You know, I've been looking in this direction of understanding thought for almost 10 years. And I still have these thinking traps, these patterns of thought that really look real to me. And actually, no thought is ever really true. It's a concept that, you know, when we believe they're true, a thought is just a concept that we've turned into a belief. So, and undoing those can be really, really helpful. So a thought trap is generally a thought with a negative swing. You know, it can be the thinking that we get caught in that can be repetitive. You know, it can be also called a cognitive distortion. These thinking traps, they can be quite ingrained into our psyche. They can look really true to us. And we can really get twisted in our own thinking. what they also do is they make us jump to conclusions. Thought is so interesting. So for me, the thought trap is we get a thought and it will lead to another thought and then another thought. And we get caught up. And from there, we can make some really bad decisions. And for me, as we understand thought a little bit more deeply, we can start to observe, start to realize when we're getting caught in these traps. Okay, because what they do is they can really narrow the thinking down. We stop seeing the bigger picture. We come out of our logical mind and we get trapped in this vicious cycle. As I've explained on other calls, thought creates feeling. So again, if we're caught in negative thinking, we're caught up in our minds, we're caught up in feelings that aren't helpful. So actually what we teach before that, what we understand is that all thought is neutral. So the traps, although they appear negative, it's our interpretation of the thinking that's doing that. At the core, all thought is neutral. It has no power. It's because we have a belief in that thinking that it becomes a trap that we get caught up in it. And so the cycle goes on. You know, we all do it. And what we do is we get so lost in that thinking, we don't know how to get out of it. And sometimes we don't even see it as thought. We see it as truth. It looks like it looks real. You know, it really looks real to us. And we get caught up. It's a bit like we turn that thought into a car and it has a crash. Well, it doesn't stop. Another car comes along. It crashes into the back of it. It crashes into the back of it until we have almost a pile up of thinking. And that's where we get really lost and we get really confused and we get this thinking becomes heavy. Our feelings become heavy. We can go into quite a dark place. Examples of that are kind of all or nothing thinking. People can see everything as black and white. So it's like, say you have a conversation with your boss at work or something happens at work and that can lead in your mind to you end up being fired. There's no reality in that, but the thought will take you to that place. Okay, we lose our reasoning, we become emotional, and we believe those emotions are evidence of the thinking being true. Okay, so what happens, it's such a clever system. The thinking comes in that's unhelpful. We believe it's true. It looks like everything's going to end, you know, in a disaster movie, and our feeling will match that. And we'll take that feeling and we'll go, well, it must be true because I can feel it. No truth in it. You know, the other thing is we think, again, say with your boss, or in a relationship, you can think you know what the other person's thinking. Another thought trap, mind reading. We don't know what others are thinking. It's enough to kind of try and work out our own thinking, let alone what someone else is. So there's all these different ways that we get caught in thought, all these labels that we give our own thinking, all this over-exaggeration that thinking does, all this personalization. You know, we make it into this disaster that's going to happen. We catastrophize all the time. And it's coming back from that. It's understanding what that is. So you can see all the many different ways that thought can catch us out, where thought can look real. And we all have our own version of it. But the understanding of the principle of thought, which is what we teach here, tends to help us in the undoing of that. It tends to help us when we get caught in that thinking, that there's a space that we can come, that we begin to see it differently. Okay, so if you can identify your thought traps, that can be really helpful because you get to see them. And when you see the thought trap, you can kind of know when you're falling into it, or you've fallen into it and you can suddenly realize, oh, I'm doing that thing again. Because actually thought isn't all bad. You know, thought is the universal power that helps us all to create life. If it wasn't for thinking, we wouldn't be having the human experience. The experience you're having is in your mind. It's in your head constantly. You know, it's created by thought. Think about that. Think about how thought creates your life. It's actually amazing. And it works the same for everybody. But we haven't looked, until we come across something like this, we haven't really looked at what thought is. And I think what happens here is we get to observe our own thinking, and it's in the observation that we can detach and we can have a different experience of it. So this is what we're pointing to here. It's a relief from these thought traps because, number one, we get to see what they are. We get to see that they're actually just made of neutral thought. We start to understand what a thought trap is, and we begin to see that we don't have to believe our own thinking. It's coming and going. We're not creating it. There's no truth to it. It's just the essence of the creation of our experience. So we come further back into not the content of thinking, we start to explore the principle of thought. We start to explore the fact that we have thought rather than this content of thought that looks real. It looks like a past. It looks like a future. It looks like a problem. It looks like a person. It looks like money. It looks like work. But actually, it's all us. And there's a deep freedom to be had in seeing that. You know, the life of a thought is only as long as you think about it. So that thought trap is only around while you're thinking about that thought. As soon as that thinking disappears, a new experience is available. That's who we are. A different thought, a different life. You know, for me, when I saw my whole world was made of thought, it completely changed my experience. It was suddenly, oh, it really is thought. I can't have an experience outside of my own head. You know, it tripped me out for a while at first thinking about it, but the truth of it and the understanding of it allowed me to have a freshness in life, because suddenly nothing was fixed, nothing was set, everything was coming from me. And it took me away from this idea of positive and negative thinking. So previously to that, I'd been in quite a lot of mental upset. You know, I'd had mental stress, I'd had a breakdown, you know, I had a lot of unhelpful, intrusive thinking. And I used to try and fight that thinking. I would say that, you know, or even people would say to me, oh, you need to think positively. And I'd think, oh, God, I'm doing it wrong because I can't think positively. You know, and it'd make me feel even worse. But when I understood this, I saw that there's no choice in that. My thoughts come and go. Sometimes they're going to appear positive. Sometimes they're going to appear negative. But actually, it's all thought. If I don't believe what the thinking is saying, it's neither positive or negative. It's just thought. So can you see how we apply our beliefs, our system, our conditioning to that thinking? A thought can only be a problem when I make it so. A thought can only be upsetting if I believe it. If I don't believe it, I'm free. Again, I don't have to worry if I'm thinking positively or negatively. Someone comes up and says, you should think positively. I'd probably go, oh yeah, okay. But I would know now, well, that's not up to me. Thought is going to appear and disappear, and then more thought will appear and disappear. That's the system. We're always having thought appear. We're always having thought fall away. That's what's always happening. That's your human experience, is coming from thought. So these thought traps then begin to have less power. They have less potency, because suddenly you don't have to go there anymore. It's like, yeah, the thought will come along, but you don't have to take it out for dinner. It rises, it passes. New thought, new experience. We all can see that, really. When we explore, we can all see that we feel so differently about the same thing in our lives. There can be something in our lives that we observe on one day and we don't like and we think it's crap, and the next day we think it's great. Or one day it looks like a problem and the next day it doesn't. It's because it's all coming from us. There is only us in the room. There's only thought in the room. But again, it looks like so many different things. So when we see this experience, when we start to understand it, it's not escaping it in the sense of, I'm going to escape my own thinking. I'm going to get away from my own thinking. No, you're not getting away from thought, because thought is creating your experience. But the observation of thought can change that. It can turn that thinking into something that doesn't have the same power over you. Those intrusive thoughts or unhelpful or upsetting thoughts that you have then just become that, a thought. When it's just a thought, it's so much easier to deal with. When it looks like reality, when it looks like the outside world, those problems, those thoughts can then become insurmountable problems, because it looks like there's a whole world to fix for you to feel okay. And that isn't true. There isn't even a you to fix for you to feel okay. All there is for you to have a deeper understanding of what thought is. And that's what we're pointing to here. That's what we're doing here. We're always coming home to thought. What is thought? Are you really creating it? People say to me, oh, I need to create better thinking. Well, if you were really in charge of creating thought, wouldn't you have done that by now? It looks to me that thought is just something that rises and passes, ebbs and flows like the tide. What we get to do when we understand that is we get to choose which ones we take notice of. So we're not choosing the content, but we can have a little bit more freedom in the choice of the thoughts that we give attention to. So we don't have to give so much attention to the unhelpful thinking, because suddenly it's not saying anything about us. It's not saying anything about our lives. It's not saying anything about who we are. It's an illusion. It's in time. It's an appearance in the moment. It appears and it disappears. So why would we get so upset about that? Thought is incredibly powerful. Don't get me wrong. Your life is made of it. But when we understand it, it just makes life easier. When I found this, I couldn't believe I'd never had a conversation around what thought was. I'd only ever really had conversations around what thought was saying. And as we begin to see this thinking as untrue, as we begin to see this thought as coming and going and not really saying too much about us, or definitely not saying nearly as much as we thought that it said about us, then we come back to the deeper questions. We come to, who are we? Because we're made of thought. The idea of who we are is made of thought. So then it becomes incredibly helpful, because those areas of the self that look fixed, those areas of the self where we may be really hard on ourselves, the past that looked real, the future that we imagine that can sometimes be wonderful or sometimes not, all of that becomes up for seeing in a different light. All of that can be seen as this illusion of thought that comes and goes. So yes, there's a world here, there's a physical world, we experience it, but our thinking around it is constantly shifting. Oh, that's a relief. It's a relief to know that it's not fixed, because the fluidity of it allows me to approach things very differently at different times. I'm not stuck in a belief system, because everything's made of concepts. So we have a mind that conceptualizes everything. A belief is a concept that we turn into something that's fundamentally true. Okay, when it's not. Okay, it's still just a belief. It's just still us applying what we think to the world. So we undo these beliefs and turn them back into thought, then change is always available. Change isn't something that has to happen from outside. And in fact, I can tell you, any change that happens outside is because you've had a shift within. I've seen this too many times for it not to be true. It may really look like the world is changing, but it's not going to change until you do. And in a moment, I'm going to go back to Jem to talk about this, because she's had such a deep experience of this lately. And I know when it looks like I want to change something in the world and I can go towards the world to try and change it, I have to stop and I have to think, no, look within first. If I want change out, change has to occur in. And it's, what am I not seeing? How can I see more deeply the true nature of who I am? So this understanding that we're talking about, that we're pointing to, this thought system, when we explore it, it's incredibly helpful just to see thought. Incredibly helpful in life to understand that it's not fixed, that everything's coming from you, and that thought isn't true. That's fundamentally incredibly freeing in life. But what it leads to is a deeper exploration, because suddenly we can see that if I'm made of thought, what does that say about me? Who am I? So this exploration of who we are begins, this inquiry into who we really are, because we're not who we think we are. So actually, if you look from start to finish, And you can see getting caught in thought, having a breakdown, having some form of mental illness, having a divorce, a disaster, something that cracks you open, that looks like a bad thing from the outside, that looks like a thought trap, that looks like you're stuck, can actually be your greatest gift, because it can turn you within. It can start the inquiry into who you really are. And that inquiry leads to a completely new life, new freedoms, a world that looks completely different, because it's coming from you. Because suddenly you're seeing through the material illusion of who you are. You're going beyond the matter. You're going beyond the mind. You're coming to a deeper truth. And everyone will get there when they begin to explore this. It's the natural progression. You can't look in this direction and not end up somehow having a deeper experience of what it means to be alive, what it means to be a human, what this journey of experience is actually made of. Because to know the true self, as far as I can see and from my explorations, is where real happiness abides. It's not out there. It's in here. Everything out there is fleeting. What we wake up within us is always with us. What I've seen over the last 10 years can't be taken away from me. It's always there. It's who I really am. Who I really am is love, is peace, is well-being, is happiness, is bliss. And do I always feel that? Absolutely not. Do I feel it a lot? Absolutely. Do I know it's always there? Yes. Do I get caught in the thought trap still? Of course. But the beauty is I know now where to look. I know where home is. I know that I don't have to go out there to get this happiness that I've always been seeking. I now know that this happiness that I've always been seeking is me. It's already there. It's a done deal. It's a done deal I don't always see, but it's a done deal. Yeah, the only place that I can be happy is here, now. I can't be happy in the past. I may have been happy in the past, but I can't be happy in the past right now. I can't be happy in the future right now. I can't be peaceful in the past. I can't be peaceful in the future. These things are only available to us in this moment. Whether we're seeing them and feeling them or not, they're only available here and now. There is nothing on the outside to get to acquire those things that already exist within us. It's unchanging and it's ever present. We just don't always see it. And that's okay. Because as far as I can see, the human experience is that we're meant to have the human experience. That we're meant to get lost, that we're meant to get caught, that we have sufferings. We have a life that we experience that has its ups and downs. But coming back to who we are, the perfection is always there. We've had this mistaken understanding that it's been out there. It's been in a person, it's been in an amount of money, it's been in a house, it's been in a country. And the goalposts are always moving, but it's there. And it's like, oh, if I get that, or I have that, or they love me, or they approve of me, or then I'll acquire it, then I'll feel it. No. You can have the illusion of that. You can mistake it for that. But there isn't truth in that. The truth is already within you. The truth that you seek, the love that you seek, the happiness that you seek is who you are. What you're looking for, you're looking with. It's you. It's always us. Again, that's the beauty, but it's challenging because it's challenging to the ego. It's challenging because you have to take full responsibility for yourself. There isn't a victim here. You're a victim of yourself, no matter how it looks. So again, this is why people can run away from it, because it's easier to stay in the illusion, or they believe it's easier. They believe it's easier to be stuck or to blame or to project it onto the world and not reflect. The brave souls do this work as far as I'm concerned. There's a bravery to facing yourself, your own thinking, your own beliefs. It's not always comfortable. The outcome is amazing, but it's not always comfortable. It's not always enjoyable. I still have beliefs come up that I have to face. I still have suffering that appears real. But I don't run from it and I don't project it onto the world. Maybe temporarily, but it will always come back to me holding it up to myself, holding the mirror to myself and seeing that it's me. Because then I'm in a position of power, of knowing, not in a position of victim and unknowing and uncertainty. I come back to, oh, I know where this is coming from. Not scanning the world, trying to blame something or someone. I'm coming back to, okay, I must have created this experience. What do I do now? How do I see it? What do I do about it? What can I do about it? How can I use this experience to see more deeply who I really am? Because when I do that, then change always occurs. That's insight. Insight is new thought, sight from within. And this work is insight producing. So that's what we're doing. Talked about it on the other show, the Beyond Self-Help. It's because the self is an illusion. It doesn't need help. It needs to be seen. It needs to be explored. It needs to be inquired as into what this self really is. But that inquiry will lead you to see the character is made of thought. The character is made of beliefs and conditionings which are made of thought. The beauty of that is all of that is available then to change. A new life. And I know with all my heart and soul that that is available for every person, no matter how life looks. Gem.
Oh, that was wonderful. And I got a bit teary during that because, yeah, I just feel like you never see it until you see it. But for me, over the last couple of weeks, it's like I didn't realize I had thought traps because I was just ignoring them because I thought, well, that's the way my life is. And there were two situations. Well, one a relationship and one a sort of work situation. And I had just sort of accepted that that was the way it is. That person's not going to change. I'm going to continue wanting to do this job. And so I just lived with it. And I was actually they were the two things that were making me quite miserable. Everything else was absolutely fine. But I felt really powerless. And I was just ignoring them and complaining about them. And I think it's realizing that everything is available, like every single part of your life can be treated in the same way. And if there are things that are not making you happy, it's just your thinking around it that needs to change. Like I've been pushing against it for quite a long time. And all of a sudden I basically just said, fuck this. And it's been a whirlwind. Everything has changed. And I can't believe I didn't see it before. But now it's very easy for me to see what those thought traps were. And those were the things that I was a victim of. I believed that well, that person's never going to change. That person is never going to change, but I can change to not feel like a victim about it anymore. And it's kind of happened overnight, and I've seen it in such a different way that I can never unsee it. Like, that relationship doesn't have a power over me anymore. And I didn't realize how probably controlled I felt, whether it was my own thinking or it was actually happening. But either way, it was all thought. And there's nothing to work out. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing to worry about. I feel like I've been working on this specifically for probably a good 3 years with you, Molls, and a long part of my life before that. And I knew there was never any, I didn't know there was no work to do. I thought there was too much work to do. And I don't know why I couldn't use the 3 principles in that part of my life until now. But I guess being around it for so long, seeing other things change, my mind must have just thought, well, why don't you try it with this? Everything that was worrying me has gone. And it was really, really emotional. I've sent you some crazy voice notes over the last week, and I've been moving. I've probably done more exercise in the last week than I've done in my life. And I've just, if there was a fly on the wall, I think it would either be a New York bestseller movie, or I would be taken away in a white van. And either way is absolutely fine, because I think life can be like that sometimes, and nobody knows what's going on for you. Just walking into what I was scared of, I think that's the main thing. I was afraid, I don't know if it was my ego, or I'd had so many thoughts about that situation. I felt trapped, or I felt vulnerable, or whatever. And I just questioned it, all of those beliefs that I had. I had a conversation with somebody that just made me completely see them in a different light. And I think they've not changed. I've changed. My bullshit meter's gone very, very low. And I just don't want that in my world. Whereas I used to think that I had to change, or I deserved it. Whereas now it's like, thank you, but no thank you. And I don't know why I didn't see that as an option before. It just wasn't available to me. And being able to say, yes, thank you, no thank you. Well, yes, at the moment, that's fine. It's being flexible. I think I had so many strict beliefs about who I was. I'm an all or nothing person. And that's great. Sometimes it was really great when I had very stressful jobs. But now it's like, well, I'm just take it or leave it, a little bit of something. There's no fixed feelings around anything. Before, I felt very constricted, almost like I was like a round peg trying to fit in all these square holes, and nothing would really work. So I was having to change myself all the time. And now it's like I can be completely free and myself, and the right situations, the right people, like everything has just worked out. Money is falling in places that I didn't think it would. I've met some incredible people that I probably wouldn't have been able to see before. And it's like, wow, I feel really emotional in a good way, but it's just, I feel like it's been building up to this point, and all I had to do was make a decision, and it's just dominoed from there. And I feel like I'm free falling. I said to Molls, I can't say this, but I'm going to say it earlier. I said, I used to feel like life was shitting on me, and now I feel like it's hitting on me. And I really do. It's like there were parts of my life I was going around feeling very sheltered and like a victim. And then other parts, it was wonderful. And I'm sure there are still parts that I am feeling like a victim, but these 2 things that I've been trying to budge, they've gone, or more so I've gone. They just don't exist anymore. I tweeted the other day and I said, God, I wish I could speak to younger me, because if I'd have said at 31, I'd be doing a podcast with one of the funniest women and one of my best friends now in the world, bloody hell, that would have changed my life. And just doing things within Bitcoin and decentralization, I really, really struggled when I was younger, and I never thought I'd be able to feel free and happy. I always thought life would be really hard. And now that it's not, and it just keeps improving, it's like, wow, I have to share that. And sometimes I know I overshare and I feel, oh, but it doesn't bother me. All the previous thoughts of, oh, that might be used against you in the future, I couldn't give a, I don't care. It's, as long as one person, not even one person, but just someone hears something. Because I know there's no scale, but I had some really, really deep, dark places, and I believed a lot of my thoughts. I was almost scared to think at points. I would sleep so much because I was scared of my own thinking, but no one would see that from me. I was very successful in the working world, life and soul of the party, but yeah, my thinking was really was not great. And when I have, it's just the thoughts. You still have sort of some scary thoughts, but it's like, wow, it's not. I just don't give it attention, and I generally laugh because it's like, wow, I used to believe those thoughts, and now you can have more fun, and it's more joyful because there's no way every thought could be true. But all I used to do was believe the bad ones. And the bad ones, they don't really come as much anymore. And also, yeah, giving it attention. What's a good thought and what's a bad thought? But all I know is that it used to be, say, 80% dark, 20% light. And now it's, say, 95 and 5. And those 5, they just come very sporadically. And they kind of make me question things and make me, it's just the duality. But it's not a deep, dark, let's struggle through life anymore. So, yeah, anybody who has felt down, depressed, felt like they can never fix certain things, like I truly did, and I'm very, very stubborn. Like there was no way that these things were going to change. And they have, but it was me that changed. And that's available all the time. So anybody who feels similar, please keep listening and talk to Molls, talk to me. But there is something out there, and that is you. You are everything. And I never realized that before. I was never told that. I was always told that, well, to fix yourself, you have to go outside. And that was probably the most dangerous thing to tell somebody. But we have something new that we will continue to share. And as you can probably tell, it's made such a huge difference to me. And if you can help by sharing that message as well, then that's amazing. I know I've been talking for a long time, but Molls, I just feel great.
No, that's lovely, darling. I love your oversharing. I'm going to kind of simplify what happened for Jem. She's been looking in this direction for a while. A lot of things had fallen away, which were all made of thought. What happens when you look in this direction, when you do the 3 principles work, is that you don't have to find the thinking, find the past, look into it, work on it for it to go away. Because you're seeing more deeply who you are, it just dissolves. Now, we don't know what's going to dissolve or when it's going to dissolve, but I do know a lot of our old thinking that causes our bad habits and our bad behaviours just dissolves and just isn't there anymore. And it's often in hindsight or in retrospect that we notice that. It's like, oh, I didn't behave like that, or I didn't do that, or I showed up differently, or I made the change. So all of the time that Jem's been looking in this direction, different things have been falling away because her thinking has changed, her beliefs have changed, things that were unhelpful have dissolved. So that would have a reflection in her life. So what happened, it just got to the point where something huge dissolved. There was something really big. We don't know what it was, but something in Jem changed. There was some belief about herself that she wasn't worthy of a certain of a good life, of good people around her. And I think that what happened was that whatever that belief, whatever that was, it just went away. And as it dissolved, suddenly she looked at her world and thought, I don't need to be in this life as it is anymore. I don't need to be around certain people the way that they are. I'm doing that to myself because I've allowed that to happen via what I think of myself. So by changing how she felt about herself, seeing through the illusion of who she was, that was allowed to dissolve. As that dissolved, of course the world's going to change. If I suddenly see that I'm worthy of all the good things life has to offer, then life's going to offer the good things. If I see that I'm not and I'm not worthy of anything, life's going to not offer very much. That's the shift. That's the change. And it hasn't come from the analysis of the mind. It hasn't come from the analysis of the past and the content of her thinking. It's come from her exploring who she really is via this understanding. It's come from her being able to observe herself and see her true nature and see that the character that she'd made up wasn't true, that the past that she felt conditioned by and identified with had no validity, didn't exist anymore. She was believing bullshit. The bullshit fell away. As the bullshit falls away, life becomes better. So I just want to go back to Jem and say that'd be a good interpretation.
That's a much better interpretation, to be
I wouldn't
honest.
say that.
you always you get my gobbledygook and condense it really, really well and put it into a very direct, true message. And it is true. The things that I was ignoring, it was because they were acceptable to me then, but they're not now. And as soon as they became unacceptable, they became truly unacceptable. It was like day and night. I thought, I cannot have this in my life anymore. It became like a semi-emergency, and I hadn't felt that fire for a long time. Lots of different things are coming into my life that I had wanted for ages, and they're just turning up like every day. And it's so obvious. It's because the level that I was vibrating on was not allowing the things that I wanted. And the blocks that I thought were in the way, it was myself. I was in the way, and I've removed myself from those situations. And guess what? I'm not going upstream anymore. I'm going with life rather than against it. And now I look back on it, I think, how the hell did I expect that to work out when I was projecting that and living that kind of existence? It would be impossible for that to come into my life. But at the time, I just felt like a victim, saying, oh, it's not fair, it's because of this. No, it's because of me. But for years, I couldn't say that to myself, whether I was trying to protect myself or the other person, or just thought I deserved a shitty life. It doesn't matter why, but that's gone now. And I feel if I still have a shitty life, it's really my fault. But no, it's been very eye-opening and very incredible. And I didn't ever think those things would change. I knew one would, but I thought the other one would be there forever. And it's just like, bang, see ya. And it's been, really, really quite amazing. So anything is available. The things that we think are stuck is only because of us or because of me. So get me out of your way.
Anything's possible. I love that. It is, anything's possible. And I loved that you said about the word acceptable. We're still a human being. We have things that are acceptable and things that are not. And it just suddenly the situation you're in wasn't acceptable anymore. And it wasn't acceptable because your worthiness came in, your understanding of who you were came in. And that's what's available to all of us. And as soon as we see that, again, the reflection comes from the world. Because all our limitations are made of thought. You can't have a limitation without it being made of thought. While that thought, that limitation looks real, it's going to manifest in the world as that, a limitation, because you believe it. Who you really are, who we all are, is unlimited. The mind creates these limitations and we think they're true. It's so freeing when you see through it, because suddenly you're this limitless being in this world, in this playground of life that we have. Now, going out with that attitude, going out with that thinking, going out with that knowing, of course life's going to lighten up. I mean, this is where we talk about the principles is so incredibly helpful for mental health. Because you're not believing those limitations anymore. You're not believing the thoughts that you believed were true about yourself. You're not believing a diagnosis. You're not buying into quite so much what the world is telling you about you. You're starting to explore more what's true about you in your own eyes. Before all of the labels and the conditioning came in. I always say, when you were a baby, you had none of this. You didn't even know your own name. There was no identity. The identity is formed, and it's formed via thought, which means it can also be unformed. It can be dissolved, and it's dissolved by seeing through that thinking. The ultimate thought trap is who you think you are. Obviously, we have all these mini thought traps that we spoke about earlier, but the ultimate one is the trap of identity, of character. We're a character that we're playing. We forget and we take it so seriously. Happiness lies in the true self. Always. Always here, always now. Before the labelling. What's true about your labels? Not very much. They're made up. You've acquired them. They've come from your family, your friends, society, who you think you are. What if all of that was on the table to change? Who would you be then? Who would you be if you could be anything? It's always such an exciting exploration, because ultimately who you think you are is a misunderstanding of truth. So we get to change, to be open and available to change. Oh, I thought I was that sort of person. Maybe now I'm going to be a bit different. Oh, I didn't think I liked that. Now I like that. We don't have to be a fixed set thing. We can be fluid. And in the fluidity, for me, and I believe for you, would be the most juice that we can get out of life. Because we're not staying in one place. We're moving. As Jem said, I'm going with the flow. Perfect. A thought trap, an algorithm of our own thinking. We stew on these thoughts that aren't true. Then we project them out into the world and we make a story about them, and we forget they're transitory. They come and they go. They trigger us. What's triggering you? Your thinking's triggering you, not a person, not a thing. It's your thinking about it. The more we understand our true nature, the less we look to fix the moment, the less we look to fix a feeling or anything that we're experiencing. It doesn't look so much like something to be fixed. It's just an experience because we're seeing from a deeper space. We're trusting more that we're not in a wrong experience. We're in the experience that we're meant to have. And where that will lead, we don't know, but we know this is where we're meant to be right now. Yeah? There's a Wayne Dyer quote that I've written down. Trust and stay in touch with your own nature. Too many of us define ourselves by what we do, what we have, thinking that we need more of this or more of that. Find your centre through being in harmony with your own divinity. That is what we're pointing to. This is the paradigm shift of the three principles. For a lot of us on the call, on Twitter, we're in the paradigm shift of money, of, Bitcoin we see as a new paradigm in the financial world. Well, there's also another one, and it's the three principles in the world of psychology, in the world of self-help, in the world of understanding who we are. We're going from an outside-in world to an inside-out. We've been brought up in a world where it looks like the world needs to be a certain way to create good feelings, to seeing that the good feelings are always there. And sometimes we see them and sometimes we don't. That's it. The simplicity of it. And the implications of that new paradigm are huge. They're huge in the world of mental health. They're huge in the world of awakening. They're huge in just everyday life. They're huge in the world of business. Because suddenly we're moving away from victim mentality to empowerment, to taking responsibility for ourselves and our worlds in the most peaceful, loving way that we can. That's a game changer. That's why Gem and I share this understanding with as many people as will listen, and why we would like you to share it. Share this, share the spaces, share the podcast. Shout about it. If it's touched your life, if you've seen the difference that it makes, tell everybody. Who cares if they think at first that you're a nutcase, that you're talking about what it's all thought, it comes from me, it's not the world. Well, at some point they'll have their own insight and they'll see it. It's the ripple effect that we want here. The more people see this, the better the world becomes. So I've really enjoyed this subject. It's so helpful. It's almost like going back to basics with thought and these thought traps that we have. But again, we all think, we're all made of thought, so we've all got something that we can see here. It's a wonderful thing. I feel very blessed that I found it. I feel very blessed that I get to share it. So I'm going to pass back to Jem. And if anyone's got any questions before we finish up, please ask.
Yeah, thank you. And I feel exactly the same. I feel like we should start our own cult and make everybody happy. But no, the people that are ready, they listen. But it is, if you can share and things, because unless you've found true enlightenment, which I don't even know if that exists, but unless you found something like this, then you're generally always searching for something outside. So finding this is really quite beautiful, and it is the game changer. We couldn't have been born into a time of more change. Look what's going on in the world. The world needs this. So yeah, mission possible, even if me and you just stand on the rooftops in London.
Yeah. I'm up for. I'm actually still, out of all of my understanding of thought, the one thing that still gets me a little bit is height. So maybe not rooftops. Maybe we'll do something else.
I'll do the roof, and
I'll do a sandwich board, and I'll just walk around the streets.
Yeah, amazing.
But
right.
Yeah,
that's the plan.
It really is. Like, keep looking. Even if you've just heard a little bit, keep with the inquiry. Keep looking. Keep exploring, because there's so much richness to be found here. Not the richness outside, it's the richness inside of you that really will change your life.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a beautiful question as well, and that was from Lou Colley. It came after a tweet that you made from Linda Pranksy, who said, "The thoughts that you give your attention to will lead to more thoughts." And Lou Colley wrote, "Out of genuine curiosity, I do agree with all of this. What is the technique for one not to do that? In my experience, the habitual nature of the default mode in the brain can be very strong for many and usually wins without a way to attend or not to attend."
Yeah, it is a great question. And techniques aren't our area with the 3 principles. You can turn what we say into a technique by all means, but I would say actually having a deep understanding and exploring what we're pointing to will lead to those habitual thoughts becoming less. A technique is adding to the mind, we're subtracting from the mind. You've heard on this call, we're taking thought away, we're challenging thought. And it's in that way you can have this insight. And, Jem and I both know and have experience of thought dissolving. And it wasn't through a technique. And the thing is, the mind loves techniques. The mind's always going to want a technique. So it's going to say, no, but I need a technique. And it's like, no, you don't. You're going back into the same system that caused the problem. We want to come out and observe the system for the problem to dissolve. So that would be my really simple answer to it. And I know, I work with you privately. I've worked with other people on the call privately, and with my clients, they've seen this for themselves. But it's hard when you're still operating from the illusion and the sense of self as if it's really true to see that. It's when you come out of that and you really begin to understand the observer, you will see that, a technique is unnecessary because you're seeing through that thinking. And when it comes along, it may catch you for a moment, but at some point you'll understand what it is. And the thought trap can be seen without a technique being used. It can just be, oh, I see what's happening there. I come out of it, I observe it, and it dissolves. In a way, using a technique is almost saying that it's a real thing, it's a solid thing, it's something I need to cure. It's not that. It's an illusion. So we've kind of got a different understanding that we come from here, a different way of approaching these things. Now, if you find a technique and it works for you, that's great, because we're not prescriptive. You know, the principles are never a prescription, they're only ever a description. So we will describe the system. You go off and do with that what you will. So that would be my answer.
Yeah, and I mean, all I really got from, well, what I've noticed is just observing. I mean, the thoughts that I have, I know if the thought makes me feel good or bad by the way that I feel. And I generally feel the thoughts that I have, even if they might look outside to be bad or negative, they don't affect how I feel anymore. It's become it's not like I'm separate from my thinking, but I'm not attached to it. So it's literally observing has been the technique for me, and the only technique that has ever worked by the feel of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. I just personally, and this could just be me, I shy away from techniques within the principles because it was the exercises and the techniques and all the self-help stuff I did before. I never got anywhere. You know, I'd always come back and revert back to overthinking and a full mind and anxiety and all of those things, whereas there was something in seeing thought that completely changed that for me. And there's I'm going to finish with an Adyashanti quote. And it's question your thoughts, question your stories, question your assumptions, question your opinions, question your conclusions, question them into utter emptiness, stillness, and joy. The keys to freedom are in your hands. Use them. I think that fits perfectly to what we've been saying. It's that questioning of and that inquiry into our own thinking, our beliefs, and who we are. That is the key to freedom.
I don't think you could have picked a more fitting quote, really. That was wonderful. Well, thank you to everybody for joining us. Today's definitely been one of my favourites. Thank you, Molls, especially. I feel like this is kind of not a milestone point. Well, it is, I suppose. I feel, although this journey's been quite a long, I think this is episode 31 now, that everything feels, for me personally, is coming together. So I just personally want to say thank you. And to everyone who listens, you've all been part of this, and just looking forward to the future. Like we always say, please share and subscribe. You don't know who it's going to touch and who may also be affected. We've got our website, theunmindingproject.com. All of our episodes are available on all platforms. Molls and I have got some plans for the future. This is a free project we do run on donation. So if you'd like to help us at all, you can just reach out or visit the website. And we'll be back at the same time next week. If you've got any questions or you'd like us to cover any topics, please reach out. That's why we do this, for you guys. So, yeah, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you, everybody that's here live, and to everybody that's listening on the podcast. If you are listening to the podcast on Fountain and you enjoyed this episode, please give us a boost. And if you're not on Fountain, you can actually earn sats by listening to us. We hope to see you all next week. And thank you again all for being here. And thank you, Jem. Love you lots. Thank you for sharing your story.
Oh, love you too. Thanks, guys.